All right, guys, you're now tuned into episode 1 of the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmylee Velez. I'm here with Goose, Heck, Manny, and Gabe. All right, so let's just jump right in it. Me, Goose, and Heck are all brothers, right? So the first segment is dad life. There's funny things that happen being a dad, whether your child is arguing with you, whether you're arguing with your child, or the life is just not making sense to a 2-year-old and they're chucking spaghetti across sketty across the kitchen table there. So does anyone have a story?
I'll jump right into it. I am a father of a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old is a girl and the 7-year-old is a boy. My story really comes from, and I think every father can relate to this, at some point, especially with a young child. Any of us who've played sports, who tried really hard to be good at something, and maybe weren't that good, i.e. me, I practice with my son a lot. The backyard catches are epic.
Yes.
They are probably laced in profane language, not by design, but by sheer frustration. But my son tends to, he's very whiffy. He's rainbows, lollipops, and gummy bears is where he lives. He's very distracted, right? He's not no ADD, but he just doesn't care. That give a care, as we like to say, is not there. So my son and I will have some epic battles going back and forth. You know, you didn't do this, catch the ball. I'm trying. No, you're not. I don't want to do this anymore. You're a quitter. And, you know, after 25 minutes, you know, I look around and I look up, you know, at the windows to see if anybody's looking. I've only ever been caught once by a neighbor. And it's because I used probably...
Arguing?
Not necessarily arguing. It was more like berating. It was close to verbal abuse. Now after
it was borderline.
Cops
were almost
after
called.
You go into the house and you really kind of like, I took a step back and was like, thought about what had just happened. I realized, I was like, man, that was pretty close to being, I could have been in trouble. So I mean, for me, that is the biggest fight or argument I have with my son. Is like, I want you to care that we're taking time to practice. And he's just like, yeah, dude, whatever. He just looks at me. He's like, okay, Dad, let's go. So it's the want and the will to want to be good at something, I guess, is the most frustrating part for me. And it tends to be, for me, a little overboard. But that's my biggest fight / argument. And I'm sure there's some people who sit at their window, you know, just cracked listening to, man, this guy's a nut. Every once in a while.
This guy is a lunatic.
Absolutely.
Now, do you feel like that's something that... Is it something that he's lacking or that you're not understanding? Could it be that you want it more than he wants to show?
Oh, God.
Or
am I living vicariously through my son? Absolutely, there's a portion. There is no doubt about that.
Do you think he even cares for the sport that you're trying to
yes,
put him in?
He cares. Yes, he cares because his friends care. But I think it's just...
I mean, and I wasn't saying that. I meant like to the level of caring is what I meant.
To the level.
It wasn't that he doesn't care. It wasn't that living vicariously through. I was saying like to the level, like you care at this intensity and he cares, but it's just at this lower intensity.
Sure, I think he shows it differently. I think we're all different. I'm more of an extrovert, and if I get frustrated at something, I try harder. When he gets frustrated at something, it's more deflating to him. So I don't know if it's, you know, I think he cares, but I just want him to care more because I'm a coach. You know, I help, you know, the other children on his team, and it's like nothing.
Sure.
And it's, you know, you tend to always be harder on your kid, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if somebody could explain that, but that's what it tends to be. So that's my biggest fight and gripe with my son.
Now that you said that, I think it is because now my son's only 2, but you see the potential in them. And you're trying to pull out the full potential. Sure. And sometimes when they're around their friends, they're kind of goofing off. And you have been at home practicing with this child. And you know the capability that he possesses. And now he's slacking off, chasing butterflies in the middle of left field. And you're like, wait a minute, whoa. So I guess that there's a frustration there because you understand the potential. And sometimes they're not demonstrating that at all times.
I think you're absolutely right. That's the toughest part is when you see it happen. It's the lack of consistency, I think, is the most frustrating part, and I think is our biggest problem. We'll spend 2 hours working on something, and he'll go to practice the next day, and it's like whatever we did for 2 hours is gone. So I just think, I just wasted a whole 2 hours of my life for no reason, and it's frustrating because my time is precious. Well, at least I shouldn't say that. Sounds selfish, but but my time is obviously
so
we're using it to the best of our ability. So I think you're right.
All right, so that was our segment, Dad Life. We're jumping into a story that I read. It was a little article. I'm not sure what the source was, but it was an interesting story on the touchy subject of bullying. But I just kind of want to get the feedback from the crew. I'm going to kind of chop up the story and kind of give it in a brief. And you guys let me know what you think. I had some thoughts, but I want to hear what you guys. So there was this, I guess, jock walking home from, this is what they were calling him, a jock in the story, walking home from school one day, and he saw what they were calling, this little weak looking person who had tons of books, basically bringing all his books home from school. And the jock said in his mind, he's like, why would anyone bring home this many books? You don't have, assignments from every single class or whatever. It was a Friday afternoon, and he saw a group of kids run up to the little, what they're referring to in the article as a nerd, walking up to him and basically pushed his books, slapped the books out of his hands, kind of poking fun at him. And then the jock saw what's going on. He ran up to them, kind of scared the kids off, helped the kid pick up his books, kind of introduced himself. And then obviously, to make a long story short, they then became best friends. So the Monday coming back, he saw this kid bringing back all these books, and he started laughing. He's like, yo, man, if anything that you're going to gain is probably muscles from, carrying all these books every time you go home. And the kid kind of just shrugged it off. They literally became best friends. So it was kind of cool, though, because he was kind of like the real smart kid. This was the stud in sports. But then this kid became the smartest one in the high school or whatever. He became the valedictorian. So the nerd, quote unquote, that's what he became. So obviously everyone knows your senior year, when you're graduating, that person gives the speech. So this nerd is giving this cool family and friend speech. You never know what someone's going through. Well, here he doesn't say no names, but I guess everyone, dude, I'm getting like chills saying this. Everyone in the school knew who he was talking about. He's talking about his best friend, this jock. He's saying that you don't know what someone else is going through, and just a sliver of kindness can go such a long way. And basically that a lending hand or just a caring heart can go miles, because what was going on, he gives the story of his freshman year where he just had, I guess, moved from another county, and he was getting picked on, bullied his whole first, I guess, day or week or whatever it was. And he was actually planning to kill himself that weekend. So he brought all those books home because he didn't want his mom to go through the struggle of going to school to clean out his locker. So he cleared his locker out for his mom, and that was the reason why he had all these books. And he was actually walking home to kill himself that weekend. And that was the reason why he had all these books. But it was someone like the jock reaching out and kind of showing that kind-heartedness that changed everything. Hence the reason why he had all those books again on that Monday to bring them back, because basically in his mind his life got saved or whatever, that not all hope was lost.
Is that a true story or just
that's a true story?
Oh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I did not expect that story to turn that way. I was waiting for it to be the jock be a jock. That was definitely amazing.
All right, so I know that's kind of like a very extreme story when it comes to bullying, but this is real life. These situations actually do happen. You don't know, but your actions, if you're a bully or someone who's just mean in that spirited way, can lead to these extreme outcomes. So I know, Manny, you said you had like a little story that you kind of wanted to share, not necessarily about bullying, but just kind of human nature.
It kind of strikes a chord with me, because I wasn't the nerd or the kid carrying the books. I was kind of the opposite. And this goes back to when you're a kid, kind of when you're innocent, you don't have any of these preconceived notions, and life hasn't really jaded you yet.
Right.
I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and the nerd actually brought in some cupcakes, birthday cupcakes, and his mom brought them in, and they were going to hand those out. And The lady actually, his mom opened them up, and the cupcakes looked gross. I mean, they didn't look good. She definitely did not read the directions right on the box. Let's just say that. But with that said, she had Fruit Loops on top as some sort of garnish or the treat on top of the cupcakes. Fruit Loops.
Oh, wow.
Fruit Loops.
When you said Fruit Loops, I thought Fruit Roll-Ups, so in my mind it was funnier, but Fruit Loops, that's interesting.
Fruit Loops. And they weren't crushed. They were just like 3 Fruit Loops, and I'll never forget. And the teacher stood up.
He was happy.
It was what?
And the kid was like psyched.
He pumped. He was with his mom. I mean, she brought him everything. And then it came out to, does anybody want one? And it was, when I mean crickets, 3rd and 4th graders being quiet is like seeing Halley's Comet. It never happens. Yeah, exactly. You should be pumped up. Well, I sat there, and there was probably about 10 seconds of awkwardness. And I can remember this clear as day. His mom turned red. The teacher was drowning. She was looking around like, oh, my God. She's like, I'll take one.
Oh, man.
And nobody even remotely, none of the kids said, me, nothing. Everybody looked down. And inside, I'm like, man, this is wrong. Nobody should feel like this as a 3rd or 4th grader. I'm thinking, I put my hand up and I'll take one, and she brought it over to me. The mom's face, the relief, because I think she felt so bad for her kid.
Yeah,
because it was happening in front of her. Like,
hearing is one thing, but
experiencing it.
Not even you're experiencing, you're seeing your kid go through it.
Exactly. Wow. And you just, for your kid, you'll do anything. And to see that actually happen, and I remember the relief on her face. And then once I kind of broke the ice, and then somebody else said it, and then everybody ended up having one. But I remember, that's obviously, not the same type of level of the story Jim told, but I think there's a small piece of like, oh my God, the relief. And he felt better, and he smiled the rest of the day. And not that we didn't become the best of friends, but we never had any issues. And, he always looked at me, said hi. We became friendly, cordial. And, people were less prone to pick on him. And it was just, to me, that one little thing that might have changed, his, let's just say that school year. But especially that day. But I do remember that clear as day.
I think it's natural for the human heart wants to connect with everyone on a certain level. And so in that connection, there's a relation. So you can relate, even though you're only in 3rd grade and you think, your mind, we think of 3rd graders as, they know a certain extent of life, but to that level of maturity that your heart was actually reaching out to this, this kind of mom and son and actually the teacher. So you're actually able to recognize that and just to make that connection kind of like, you understood on some certain level, which is kind of crazy. Sure. Like you actually think about it, man, I was in 3rd grade and, you're making these.
Absolutely.
You wanted to reach out and have that, you understood what was kind of going on. That happened to me in 5th grade where we had to bring in our favorite music and what we listened to. And it was kind of like a show and tell thing, but it was, I guess, music edition or something like that. I don't remember specifically what I even brought in, to be honest with you. I remember this one kid brought in, I had no idea what the music was going to be, but it looked like the teacher wanted him to participate because he was kind of just sitting in the background, not really engaging. I don't know if it was because he didn't like anyone else's music or it looked like he wanted people to connect with him, but he didn't know how to do it. He was very kind of like an introverted person. So I remember like pushing him to like, I'm like, come on, dude, just put it on. It's okay. Like we all listen to different music and whatever. I never forget, man, he put on some hardcore rock. And I literally, I'm not even being funny, I got a headache. Like I was like, holy, it was like just, I don't know who the artist was. There was nothing wrong with it. I didn't expect that. You know what I mean? It was just bam, bam, bam. It was just craziness, right? And he was loving it, dude. Like he was like in the moment, he's like going like this. He started like slapping on his knees, like playing the drums on his knees or whatever. So he's like, he goes back and he's like, slapping on his, he's loving this whole thing. Man, I just remember, I'm like, at some level, I'm like, why in the world did I tell this dude to play with his music? But at the same time, it was like that. I felt relief for him because I felt like that could have been a defining moment where he couldn't be him. And we're only in 5th grade. So if he was already feeling that, we didn't even hit high school yet. Right. So the fact that, I felt like that may have helped. I mean, the kid actually ended up doing, I think, music as a career. So I don't know if that was a defining moment. You would have to interview that guy, but I remember just feeling good about myself. Like, just, he looked like there's something pent up, and then he got it. Even though, like, it was to a level I didn't understand the music or whatever. But yeah, man, I really do think there's something when it comes to a connection. Whether you're the bully, that kid watching this nerd get his books knocked down, or seeing Fruit Loops on a sad cupcake, or some random heavy metal being played at just randomness. There's just still a connection, all at the same level, which is great about all those stories. You go books, cupcakes, and music, is that none of them have anything to do with each other. But the biggest, I guess, connection is that human relationship that is like just yearning to reach out to another human being, regardless of how different we are, right? And it takes people like that. Not that I am not patting myself on the shoulder. That was a 5th grade me anyway. But it's just in general, if people can understand the core message, if you try to understand someone first before picking on them or bullying on them, the guy that Manny was talking about with the cupcakes, if someone actually sat down and was inside his kitchen and watching him and his mom make these and pouring their heart out, and his excitement coming in, and the car ride, the conversation on the car ride going into school, and if you have that visualization, would you just sit at that desk and not take that cupcake? No, I don't think so. If I knew that kid was holding on to that rock CD for the whole week, because this was like something that was planned out, and he could not, and he kept going back and forth with his friends and his mom, and he's like, I want to connect with these people, but this is the only thing that I know. And you get the whole backstory of why he picked that specific song and had meaning, and he was probably trying to connect to us on a certain level. Would we not have accepted him or gave him this weird look that was just too weird for us? Probably not. If people known that this kid was just a new kid, he was actually trying to make friends when he's carrying those books, and he was going to kill himself, and we actually knew that story, would you slap those books off of his hands that day? Probably not. So I guess the core message is reaching out and trying to understand and putting your feet in their shoes and kind of walking in their shoes for a mile for once, and trying to get that even at a basic level. It's not saying that you have to know people on a deeper level, but at least more than just their name or what you see on the exterior, because that's what they're judging. They see a nerd carrying books.
Sure. I mean, put yourself in that situation. It just me. I think what I did was, in my thought process at that point was, let me put myself in his shoes. Let me stand in front of 20 kids with my mom next to me.
Brutal.
And when my mom says, "Hey, does anybody want to share, in the cupcakes?" and not one person says anything, I'm mortified as a kid.
Absolutely.
As a 8-9-year-old, what are you thinking? Like, nobody likes me, and at that point, you're just exaggerated as all hell at 8 and 9 years old. Nobody's ever gonna like me. So I mean, I immediately was
sensitive.
Like, yeah, super sensitive, because how many friends do you really have? Usually go home, do your homework, and then chill in the house and go to school. So you don't have that there. So I think I immediately put myself in that situation. Was like, man, if that was me, I would want somebody to help me out. And that just kind of was a turning point to say, hey, not even to help the guy, but God, I just felt bad for him. Throw him a bone. So
yeah, dude. That's spot on. Just going back to that whole human relation thing. Plus, I thought that was incredible. You're in 3rd grade, and you can sense that. I think we all had that feeling, I guess, at one point, even at a young age. If you could actually think back, there was a time where you kind of felt an energy feeding off of another human being, where you kind of felt bad. That's very powerful. You think how strong we are as, I guess, just as a soul, like a human soul. That's not learned, that's not taught. You know what I'm saying? No, that's just like a natural.
It's an innate kind of ability that
right.
a person has to feel that. So yeah, that not thinking about it, like, man, you are. I think I look at my son, who is in 1st grade at 7. And he's kind of emotionally, like, I tell my wife these things, like, hey, man, we can't argue in front of him because he feels that. And to go back and be able to feel that and think to myself, and it's obviously not stained my memory, but it's burned into my memory, because I can remember the Fruit Loops. It was red, green, and, like, purple. So I can remember. It's very vivid. So it obviously, I burned into my thought, or to my mind, that whole situation. So it's left obviously a lasting mark.
Well, I was going to say, I can add to that somewhat, like, be on the other side of that, for the fact that, I mean, throughout grade school and somewhat in high school and stuff too, I have actually somewhat been more the victim of, like, bullying, or randomly, not consistently, but it was like, I remember there was, like, random time in, like, I would think. I remember one time, like in third grade, my teacher even made fun of me, which is bizarre as heck. And I don't know, I don't know what their cause it was, but it was like she literally like badgered me to the point I was crying in class. So.
Oh, well, that happened to me in second grade.
So I mean, yeah, but there was times like in sixth grade where like we had like a substitute like art teacher or something. So like, substitute people, the kids go crazy anyway. They don't know how to control anybody. I remember I always sat like towards the back of the class, and like everybody's like all over the place anyway. But there was something where like if you take like an ink pen and like rub it really fast, it gets like hot.
Yeah,
there was like two kids on both sides of me kept doing that, and like it was literally like burning my neck.
Jeez.
And like they kept doing it to the same point I was like I just started crying. I was like I couldn't do anything. And then we went to my main like our homeroom because we was like our teacher. Like the teacher had to like freaking lecture the heck out of them because like it was like what are you thinking doing that stuff? It's like nobody sixth grade whatever that is.
Jeez.
So it's like what like I was like where do you think like it's right to even do that? Nobody ever at that point nobody defended me. I was like in the back of class. Nobody seemed like nobody cared. So it was like you feel like horrible the whole day. Even though it didn't always happen like that, but it's like being on the side and like nobody's defending you. It was like what is the point? It's like you just feel horrible like the rest of the day. And it's like
So you can feel. I mean, I guess you can relate to like if someone did get saved. So you can relate to that person. Not necessarily had to be a jock, just someone who understood and reached out. If they kind of stepped in and said, "Yeah, that's not cool," or whatever. Yeah. You're burning the back of someone's neck. Where in the world?
And
did
I had like literally
from?
marks and everything. I was like, teacher was like, "What in the heck is going on?" Like,
yeah, that's like a whole nother level of stuff. So we got both. Unless Heck is the bully or something.
Yeah. Twist up this whole story. When Gabe said doing the whole paper thing and running it and getting the ink pen hot, yes, I was that kid that did that to several girls on their arms.
So you did it as flirting, or
I did it as grabbing their attention, not realizing. Again, I didn't realize I was being a bully, and now sitting back and listening to these stories and stuff, I kind of actually was a bully. I would always sit there and make fun of some kids, and I would make fun of their sneakers, and I would just like, oh, look, you got holes in your jeans, and now I sit back and I'm like, my parents raised me better, so for me to even go that route was just beyond me. But yes, the whole shaking the pen thing, I knew exactly what you're talking about. And
hold on, let me cut in here. Why did you do it? Being on the other side, I'm trying to think about like, man, why would you do it?
Not sure.
Just funny?
I just.
Was it funny?
It was funny to see the reaction. Yeah, absolutely. And I just because it was amazing to me that I moved my pen fast and I didn't realize that the tip can get that hot because I did it to myself. I don't know what possessed me to do it through my head. So there was a cute girl sitting next to me, so I went on the paper, boop, 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 scribble, 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 got burning hot, and I put it on her arm, and she jumped and she looked at me and just like yelled, screamed at me. So I continuously did it for like 3 days straight. I would do it to different people, but it was mainly to girls for whatever reason. And I thought that was getting their attention.
well, listen, you got 4 daughters. We obviously know why you were doing it. But the better question is for me is to say, like I made fun of my friends, which obviously when you get a group of friends, breaking stones is kind of
they weren't friends. They were just random kids.
What possessed you to do that? Maybe make fun of them. Was it an inner conflict of yourself?
There was a lot of times I always thought when I was younger, I always thought that nothing could happen to me. I honestly thought that. Really? And I thought I was always better than everyone as a kid. And it's pretty pathetic because I know that I'm not better than anyone and not more powerful than anyone. It's so ridiculous that I always thought that nothing could happen to me and these kids are just whatever.
Really? And what's funny too?
It was pretty pathetic.
There is something about, I guess, like teenagers, and they have this whole thing where they can't get in trouble. And obviously a lot of this bullying is going on in schools where they can get in trouble, but only to a certain extent, right? Where they're not getting, I mean, obviously it depends on what they do. But if it's like what they consider little stuff, but it's detrimental to someone's mentality, that it's actually crushing someone inside. But when everyone's looking at it as he kicked this kid and made him fall down some steps, let's suspend him, let's do da-da-da. When you do stuff like that, as an adult, there's like jail time, there's charges, it's as much a more severe penalty that comes associated with that. I don't know if it's something that what you just said, kind of you felt like basically invincible, that kids might have this feeling of, well, me being in trouble is probably going to be limited. And then as in Gabe's example, no one even cared. or even said anything. I mean, and then to top it off, it was a substitute teacher. So if these kids are saying, you know, getting that really does lead into terrible behavior anyway. If someone's not getting reprimanded, or the level of their of them getting reprimanded is so little to what they always say, take away something that your kid likes, or your kid likes video games, and the person just keeps taking away something that they don't even care about, the kid's going to continue to do that. But in Gabe's example, where no one stood up for him, or even if it was a teacher, and actually you did say the teacher did give like a lecture or whatever.
But the homeroom teacher, the teacher in our class didn't.
Well, it was a substitute, you said, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like
substitutes really
collecting a check.
Yeah, that's it, pretty much.
Oh man, that's brutal.
Well, to kind of chime in here, is it a learned behavior, or is it a just kind of a maturity that obviously everybody goes there at their own pace? Do you learn that from maybe at home, or is it just literally a maturity thing? As growing up.
For me, it was a behavior as pushing the limits to see how much trouble I can get into. And again, in 5th grade, my mom will tell you, to this day, I was grounded from October to March. That's how good I was. So that just explains a lot. So it was me pushing limits to see how far I can go, pushing my limits. And kind of to this day, I still push my limits, but I know that, like, if it's hurting someone's feelings, like if I push, I like to joke and kid a lot. So if I push someone's buttons way too far where I can see it in their face, or I can tell that they're bothered by something I said, I kind of fall back, and I see how they're feeling, and I'm like, wow, I really hurt their feelings, and I gotta apologize. That happened to me not too long ago at work, where me and my one coworker, we joke around a lot and whatever. He took something serious, that it was something that I had said to him, but in a meaningful way. So it was through a text message. He texted me something, and I text him back something that he took, personal. But he said that he took it personal is because it was through a text message. He couldn't see my face or couldn't visualize how I was saying it to him.
Yeah, text messages are weird.
So me and him got into the altercation. Not an altercation, we just got into like a little disagreement type of thing. And now we really don't speak to each other much. So and that's why I say I kind of limit myself now, like with joking with people, and I'm not out to hurt people's feelings, but when I do hurt their feelings, I'm not trying to, I can notice it, and I see it, and I try to fall back and apologize and take the fault for the whole situation.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, just kind of going opposite of that, there's some people who might, whatever he's saying, push the limits. There might be some people who are seeing this at home. Seeing just maybe coming from like an abusive relationship or something. Maybe they're not getting abused, but they're seeing, maybe one of their parents constantly yelling or scolding their, significant other, and they think that might be okay. Sometimes there's just a disconnect how people think that in their mind, kind of like what Heck said, he didn't even know he was necessarily hurting someone's feelings because he's pushing the envelope or, testing the limits. Till he sees it in their face, or until someone says something. It might not, there's other people who are a little bit more on the other side, might reserved or sensitive to it. It might be a natural thing. Some people are just, because we all know that there's some kids or people out there, they're just off the wall from the get. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's just like a DNA thing or whatever. I have no idea. But there are in-betweeners where you're kind of like, oh, he might have saw that at home, or she might have saw that at home, or something like that. It's very interesting. All right, so with everything that has been said about, picking on people and bullying, I think it's a very, it's a hot topic right now. It's a sensitive topic. If you're a bully out there, stop. Knock it off. It's not cool. It's not serving the greater good. In fact, I think you're probably harming yourself more than anyone, because there could be years down the road where you kind of think about things and start regretting the way you treated people, and then you kind of come to this realization, like, man, I was like, not only was I a knucklehead, I really affected people in a negative way, and then you have like this baggage, hanging over you. You never want to have that. The best way to leave people is hopefully you can leave them with a more positive note. And I know everything's not perfect. That's the reason why this podcast is titled "Why Can't We All Just Get Along?" Because I think there has to be a forced effort. Sometimes we're not going to agree with everything that everyone does or says. We have to. That comes with a maturity where almost agreeing to disagree, as long as anyone's not getting hurt, or let's try our hardest to kind of get along with one another, and respect each other. And the biggest, I guess, takeaway from this is actually put yourself in that person's shoes. And would you or want your kid get treated the way you're treating people?
All right, just to kind of second that or piggyback off what Jim's saying, using Heck's kind of life example, what goes around comes around. It's a cliche. So whatever you're doing to someone, just remember that it will at some point catch up to you. So you're going to be wearing that shoe on the other foot one day. So just make sure you treat people the way you want to be treated.
And I can't say that I'm ready for it, but I have to be ready for it because I know it will come back around to me. And it may have come back around to me, and I may have not noticed it, but it does. It will come back around.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think we all, to some level, I wouldn't put it under the title of bullying, but to some level, maybe for some kind of intimidation or kind of making fun. Oh, first of all, everyone make fun of somebody at some point, at some level, even if it's like your own little brother or sister or cousin or neighbor, whatever. And there is this weird thing where joking around with people, and either you get too comfortable and you just go for the one that's like, straight for the jugular, and like, oh gosh, this guy. And we all have that one friend who takes things to the unnecessary level where you're like, dude, we're just kidding around. You just like took that joke to a whole nother thing. But that is a form of bullying. That is a form of intimidation, right? That's a form of manipulation. That's a form of just a negative energy forced on someone else that didn't ask. It's unsolicited. All right, so we are going to jump into our third segment. What was a funny sibling argument or story you have to share with us? Why can't we all just get along, right? And you kind of think about that, and then you go back to childhood memories and think about the times you guys kind of went through something or did something with your sibling or whatever that's funny. Gabe?
I have something. It's like really quick. It's like it was me and my sister were like in my mom's bedroom. We're like watching TV or something. She said she was gonna go and get soda, so she came up or something, one kind of soda. But nonetheless, it was like a big like almost like a solo cup glass. She came upstairs and pretended like to drink it, even though it was for me. And for some reason I got so angry at that when she handed it to me after she jokingly like, oh, okay, here we go. I like threw the whole cup at her. I just like turned it over and splashed at her. I don't know what in the world possessed me to do that. But it's like I made a mess everywhere. I had to clean it up too. For the fact that I'm the one who made the mess. But it was like the dumbest thing I've like done with my sister. We had like random other like fights and stuff. But that was like one of like the dumbest, like made no sense at all.
That's classic. I remember one time we used to go in this back, I guess it was just like this massive land where there used to be, it was a parking lot. I guess there was buildings or whatever. It was actually behind a church that we used to attend in the town that we're from. And we used to ride our go-karts and our mini bikes back there. There was no traffic. It was just an abandoned parking lot. And we're just, kind of doing circles. And Goose was, I guess, just got, I don't know, either sidetracked or super excited about, riding a mini bike, that he just kept passing us, and me and my dad were like waving him on, like, stop, it's Jim's turn, stop. He flew by us one more time, and my dad looks at me and he's like, you'll get it this time. And I'm like in tears because whatever. I don't know if he was doing it on purpose or not, but he was just like, what they say, chillando goma, was just like, burning rubber or whatever. So he comes back around. My brother's just like staring at us, laughing. My dad runs straight at him, grabs his arm, and the mini bike keeps going. So my brother's off the mini bike, gets yanked off, and the mini bike crashes. Well, it like tore up it was a very, not the best put together mini bike. So the handlebars got like all jacked up or whatever. And I couldn't ride the mini bike anyway. So he's crying, I'm crying. My dad's ticked the heck off. Then my mom comes, I remember from the top of this hill, comes storming down from like the church or whatever. She's yelling at my dad. I'm like, everybody was in trouble. Everybody was in trouble. It was hilarious. So it started out something so little that every single person was like mad at the other person. Why is he crying? Why is the mini bike broken? Oh my gosh, hilarious.
So on a side note, the mini bike actually broke before that accident.
The confessions.
Yeah, I was riding that mini bike. Actually, it so happened to be in the same location. I was with my dad. It was a Sunday after service. We went home. We picked up the mini bike, and it was a bunch of guys just hanging out. They were doing something else, and I was riding the mini bike. I insisted. I told my dad, I was like, I want to ride the mini bike. I want to load it up. Let's go. Let's take it. He's like, no, let's leave it. So finally, he gave in to me, and we took it. So we go out to this park. And just I'm riding and ripping and rhyming. I'm solo. Nobody else is. I'm not taking turns with anybody. I'm just driving it or riding it.
Was I there? Were we there?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I think it was just me and Pop. So I'm riding it, and I was going. I just like to go fast. There's something about the speed, and again, I thought I can control the bike and stop it when I wanted to. Well, no, here goes me. I'm hauling down the street, I'm hauling down, and I go to slam on my brakes. Well, I slam on my brake. It was a foot pedal brake, and the bike just slides. Well, there was a junk car on the other side of it, and I slide. The bike completely slides, goes underneath the car, and the handlebar snapped there. I didn't say nothing. I'm pinned underneath the car. I finagled my way out of this car from underneath, and meanwhile, the mini bike is still running. I slide it out, and I'm so baffled. I did not know what happened. Meanwhile, this is how brilliant we were. I didn't wear a helmet. So I have no idea. And to this day, I don't understand how my parents let us ride this mini bike without a helmet. So I pull out the mini bike.
Right there, man.
I pull out the mini bike, and the handlebar is just completely dangling. So me, on the quick thinking, I go to my dad's truck, and there's duct tape, and I tape up the handlebar, and I twist it all up kind of thing. And I seen that it was broken. So I put like a piece of I found like a branch in there to kind of sturdy it up. So I
my man was
duct taped
innovative.
it up. Dude, I was MacGyver. You don't even know. And I just duct taped it all up, and I left it at that. And I didn't say nothing to no one. So I put the bike away. My dad goes, "What's the matter? Are you you done with the bike?" And I was, yeah, I don't want to ride no more. Meanwhile, I broke the bike. I felt bad because I'm waiting for my brothers to find out later on or notice it because they noticed everything that I did. Waiting for them to yell at me. But fortunately for me, nobody knows until now. So that's my story. But it had nothing to do with arguing with my siblings or anything.
Man,
but yeah, so I broke it first.
Duct tape?
Duct tape
you
and a
fell
twig.
through a car. You didn't have a helmet on.
No, I slid under
duct tape something with a stick.
The
Man,
dirt bike
who was
under
watching us?
Nobody. God.
Yeah.
Man, that was brutal.
Thank God it was right behind church, probably. You had angels on your shoulder.
Man, lucky duck. All right, so we're going to continue on. This segment is called Quotable. I'm going to give a quote and kind of get feedback from the crew. This one is from Og Mandino, depending on how you say his name. Some people say OG Mandino, Og Mandino. All right, so the quote goes like this. Beginning today, treat everyone you meet as if they were going to be dead by midnight. Extend to them all the care, kindness, and understanding you can muster, and do it with no thought of any reward. Your life will never be the same again. Og Mandino. That kind of goes back from before when we were talking about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So this is basically a quote about understanding. And wow, just imagine how you would actually treat someone if you knew, that's a little fatalistic, but if you knew they were going to be dead by midnight, just how you would embrace them. If for some reason I thought of a dog, like dog, anytime, no matter when a dog sees you, they are excited, ecstatic. I mean, seriously, people say you can learn from them.
Love,
this doesn't matter. Does anyone have that, get that feeling from this quote about the understanding and putting yourself in someone else's shoes?
This quote is as profound and as I would love to use this as an example. That sounds exhausting. I only say that because could you imagine throughout all your trials and tribulations throughout the day to be able to step back and think, OG Mandino, like just think, man, they're going to die. How would you treat them? To me, how I look at it, I'm exhausted emotionally to try to stay up on that high, because sometimes you got to pull it out of yourself. You might not be feeling that well that day.
Yeah.
And to me, to be able to do that, I mean, if you could do it, God bless you. You become Mother Teresa. But if you can't, this quote, as awesome as it sounds exhausting to me.
Yeah. I think it actually is it's a lengthy way to say the golden rule anyway, right?
Treat someone.
Yeah, treat thy neighbor as you treat yourself kind of deal. I think it is that because really, even if you're saying we all have bad days, so realistically, yes, it is impossible. There's no way you can basically operate at that level at all times. But I think it's really just giving you the realization of, I guess, that drop back looking at life like, wow, you don't know when it can be someone's last day. Of course, every single day we're not going to be like, running up to each other and like celebration all the time, because otherwise literally nothing will get done. Yeah. Right? I mean, if people are in a complete, we should celebrate each other though. I think that brings us back to that, that core belief that we're in this together. We are one. We should embrace each other's lives and support each other as much as we can, because just like that kid who was walking home from school that Friday afternoon, you don't know what someone's going through. You don't know what struggle that person is. We're brothers, and we don't even know some of the stuff that we're experiencing, right? We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what's going on in that person's mind. And it could be that day you want to choose to use that, smart comment and just throw it out there, a little stab or whatever, instead of kind of, lifting up that person. I'm not trying to take away from joking around. I'm not trying to take away from, having that camaraderie where you can, act a fool in front of your boys and Manny says break stones. But I think it is fantastic way to, a quote that you should probably read every once in a while. I think it's more of a reminder, because we're definitely not angels. I can say that for sure.
Yeah, it's more to bring it back to normalcy, because sometimes you get off the track. This kind of gets you back on the straight and narrow. This quote, now reading it again, kindness and understanding you can muster, and do it with no thought of any reward. I think that's the biggest thing. Doing it because there's not an objective or a goal of doing it because it's the right thing to do.
I mean, going back to, Manny was saying before with heck, what goes around comes around, which also is the law of attraction, which is all these things is what you put out is what you're going to get back in return, right? So if you put out these lousy energies towards people that you really don't care for them, you're just very, very self-centered and concerned about your tiny little world, that's just what's going to come back to you, right? And we see people in life that live lonely lives, sad, pitiful, lonely lives later on in life, knowing, and you could just look back and like, man, you probably didn't contribute to much. Right, aside from your little selfish, I guess, belief system where everything was about you, majority of people hopefully get over that after their adolescence. I mean, I think that's what that's for. A lot of frustration. You're confused. You're leaving your childhood, entering into adulthood. Super confusing. You feel like you do know it all, but just that contribution to life. Because, and it says what you can muster. So it's like, with all you can, it's like sometimes you have to put a smile on your face, even though you had the crappiest day. To top that off, 90% of us are dads, your kids are watching, right? So if they see you always walking around miserable or treating people in a negative way, quote unquote, bullying or whatever it is, they're then where what Manny was, said earlier could be a learned attitude or whatever presence that these kids are giving off.
Speaking of that, I actually was driving here. I read a quote passing a church, which said, "A parent's life is a child's guidebook." Kind of touching on what you're saying. Wow. Yeah, and I drove here thinking like, man, that's something to talk about. But anyway, kind of piggyback off what you were saying. If you use that as a train of thought, I mean, that'll kind of bring you back to center very quickly if you're a parent.
Oh, man, dude, it's like the cameras never get shut off. You know how, like, at the end of the day, you get to leave work so no one's actually watching you or micromanaging you anymore? You can't do that in life, right? I mean, your kid is literally watching how you get dressed, how you eat, how you talk, how you walk, how you carry yourself, the swag you have or don't have, right? They're watching there's mannerisms that me and my brothers have, that we all have, that we got from our parents. It's a learned thing, how we talk to people. I mean, even like these guys here, I see how they even talk to, like my brother Goose, how he talks to his customers and stuff. It's like the natural kidding around like our dad always used to have. He was giving us funny examples of when he has kid customers and how he kind of sparks conversation with them and stuff like that. And even hearing their responses, I'm sure, is kind of like relates to that. If it's like a person who's like kind of miserable, you kind of know your level of joking around or whatever it is.
Yeah, and actually going with that does, like, you see the kids come in and you see how they are, like, goofy and whatever, and you look at the parents, that's how they are. Yeah. And then you see some parents come in, they're kind of, like, straightforward, serious, and they sit there and just wait for their turn. Yeah. And you see the child sitting next to them, they're the same exact way when they're in the chair, trying to spark off a conversation. They're just like, yes, no, real quick answers.
Right.
Yeah, everyone has, like, their own characteristic and stuff, and they obviously get it from their parents. They see where some kids know how to act, like, when it's time to act up or when it's time to be good or whatever. For the most part, they don't, but if they feed off the parents.
Right.
Like if you're acting goofy, the kid's going to start acting goofy. If
Right.
you're serious, the kid's going to kind of be somewhat serious in situations.
Yeah, and then sometimes the kid doesn't care or just hopped up off some like lollipop or something and ventures off and acts like a fool. They're also watching how that parent's going to correct them. My mom's not correcting me or my dad's not correcting me, so I'm going to just keep acting crazy or whatever. So the way they correct, right, is that not how you correct your kids? For the most of the part, a lot of how our parents corrected us or disciplined us is a huge part on how we discipline our kids. I'm not saying that we pull off or say the same things, because a lot of these are joint relationships. There's parents that are together that they decide on how they're going to handle certain things. But even in the back of your mind, I hear my mom's like, oh my gosh, I sound like my mom. And then there's some stuff I say, I'm like, holy smokes, I sound like mommy right now. So that's obviously a learned thing. Just and people say learned, it's not just like literally reading books and stuff like that. I'm like, literally they're watching you, and they take that as acceptable. So if your dad steals from the corner store and you're in the getaway car every weekend, that's the actions that you're more likely prone to do. I mean, I have friends who are readers because they said their parent was always reading, or right before bed their parent was always reading. They always had books in their house. This is not to say that we can't stop. The buck doesn't stop here. We can't change, the family tree in certain aspects of life. And in fact, you absolutely can in every single aspect. But that also goes, if you want to change it for the better, survival of the fittest type of thing, you have to pay attention. You have to realize how you treat people. You have to realize that's called being an adult. And an adult is such a terrible way to explain life, because it's like everything filters underneath this umbrella of adulthood. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.